Welcome to Northwest Unitarian Universalist Church. I'm Kimmy Regal, the minister, and we have our full staff with us except for Ken, who's taking the Sunday off. Grateful for all the work that the staff has done and continues to do to put on these services each Sunday. If you like the pictures of the Gable family, we would be glad to feature your family at some point, so you could send us a bunch of pictures of your family, and that would be another way for us to see each other's faces, and that's always a good thing. Jan will light the chalice for us this morning. Our chalice lighting this morning is a combination of Salute to the Sun and a Walt Whitman poem.
Look to this day, for it is life, the very life of life.
Whoever you are the one for whom the earth is solid and liquid.
In its brief course lie all the verities and realities of your existence, the bliss of growth, the glory of action, the splendor of beauty.
Whoever you are the one for whom the sun and the moon hang in the sky.
For yesterday is but a dream, and tomorrow is only a vision. But today, well lived, makes every yesterday a dream of happiness, and every tomorrow a vision of hope.
For none more than you are the present or the past. For none more than you is immortality. Look well, therefore, to this day. At this time, we'd have our offerings and announcements. On June 14th is our flower communion. Send us your pictures with flowers or not, but just so we can see your pictures of people. The board has voted to continue online services until August 31st. And I believe Linda Morris has an announcement, if you can find her, Ben. I'll continue until you find her. Chalice Lighters is a regional Unitarian Universalist grant program. It asks contributors to donate a minimum of $60 spread out in 3 asks over the year. We would like to apply for a grant to update our audio-visual equipment. 6 families in the church already donate to this fund. To apply for the grant, we need 10% of the congregation to be contributors. So we need 10 or 11 more contributors. Look for information on how to contribute in the newsletter. And the Chalice Lighting Grant will help us to update our AV and join the 21st century. Did you find Linda yet?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay.
Can you hear me? See me?
Yep, okay. Gotcha.
I just wanted to tell everybody that I'm sure most of you are aware that we're doing social events on Friday nights. And I wanted to let people know that on May 22nd, we're doing kind of our own moth hour with the title Stories from a Simpler Time. And we're asking for somewhat upbeat stories. They don't have to be hilariously funny, but somewhere around 10 minutes or less. And I think, if you have a story, you can email me, or you could tell Ben, or you could call me. I mean, I know we have some great stories out there. I just saw John Amberger sneak in, and he has a great story. So, and if you don't have a story, please just come and join us and listen. It'll be fun. Okay, thanks, Kimmy.
Thanks, Linda.
Linda, you can send me the information with more information. I'll make sure.
Mary's gonna send it to you.
Okay, great, perfect.
Okay.
Thanks. Yep.
I wanted to remind everyone that the Ministerial Discretionary Fund is still available and people have been very generous. So let me know if you need any resources. During the month of May, we will continue to split the collection plate with We the People of Detroit, providing water and other resources for the most vulnerable in the city of Detroit. I appreciate your generosity. And at this time, we'll have joys and sorrows. If you have a joy or a sorrow and you would like to speak it, you can put it in the chat, and and one of us will read it, or you can raise your hand and Ben will unmute you so you can speak your joy or sorrow. So our first hymn this morning is Morning Has Come.
Morning has come, arise and greet the day. Dance with joy and sing a song of gladness. The light of hope here shines upon each face. May it bring faith to guide our journey home. A new day dawns, once more the gift is given. Wonder fills this moment shared together. The light of peace here shines upon each face. May it bring faith to guide our journey home. Open our eyes to see that life abounds. Open hearts to welcome it among us. The light of love here shines upon each face. May it bring faith to guide our journey home.
Our message for all ages is called Up and Bear, and it is by Kate Banks, illustrated by Naoko Stoop. Whoosh! When the great gray owl swooped down, screeching, "Hoo, hoo!" the Arctic wolves knew that the big freeze was on its way. They took shelter in a snowdrift, and they listened to the fierce wind holler and roar. They watched the snow blow in spirals, wrapping the world in a fluffy white coat. But then the winds bitter turned warm and the sun appeared. The big melt came, and one lone pup found itself on a sheet of ice, spinning out to sea. The pup slid into the water. He swam, and when he reached the land, he burrowed into a snowbank. He was tired, and he wanted his mother. The pup closed his eyes, and he fell asleep, listening to the throb of silence across the still landscape. He woke to the feel of a cold nose against his fur. The smell was familiar. It was a polar bear. "You are not my mother," said the pup, flattening his ears against his head. "I am not your mother," said the polar bear, "but I can cuddle you and keep you safe." The pup was shy and frightened. "Aren't you going to eat me?" he asked. "Polar bears eat wolves." "Not this one," said the polar bear, shaking her head. "Climb on my back, and I will take you to my den." The pup stretched a paw forward cautiously, and then he climbed onto the polar bear's back, and they crossed the tundra under the watchful eyes of a trio of baby puffins learning to fly. Back at the den, the polar bear licked and cleaned the pup. I am not your mother, she said, but I can feed you and keep you warm. The next day, they set off across the wintry tundra. When they spotted a walrus with long, sharp tusks, the polar bear bellowed and chuffed. Where are we going? Asked the pup as they neared the water. I am not your mother, said the polar bear, but I can show you where to catch a fish. They passed a snow goose perched on a nest of eggs. They sniffed the trail of a seal as he tried to outsmart them, and they stopped at the water's edge where the fish and the lemmings came and went in the wondrous wheel of life. The sun shone down on the crisp, crackling snow, and the polar bear rolled in a snowbank. Come on, she said to the pup. I am not your mother, but I can play with you. But when the pup tugged too hard at the polar bear's fur, the bear growled. I am not your mother, she said, but I can scold you. And then she nuzzled the pup and tickled his tummy. Tired at last, the pup curled up against the bear, and they napped, listening to the wind whimper and sigh. The earth turned round and round, and the big freeze came, followed by the big melt once again, until at last the polar bear nudged the wolf, who wasn't a pup any longer. I am not your mother, she said, but I know it's time for you to go. She nuzzled the wolf one last time, and the wolf nuzzled her back. Then he walked out into the wide world. The wolf howled to the moon, which glowed on the horizon, where day ended and night began, and he was answered by the cry of another wolf. Soon he was leading his own pack across the frozen tundra. And one day, the wolf came upon a polar bear cub huddled in a snowdrift. Where is your mother? Asked the wolf, but the cub didn't know. The wolf sniffed the cub and rubbed its fur with a wet nose. You are not my mother, said the cub, cowering. I am not your mother, said the wolf, but I can cuddle you and keep you warm. Aren't you going to eat me? Asked the cub. Wolves eat polar bears. Not this one, said the wolf, shaking its head. Climb on my back, and I will take you to my den. The polar bear clambered onto the wolf's back. I am not your mother, said the wolf, but you can stay with me until you're big enough to be on your own. And the wolf led the pack back across the tundra, along the path that went round and round in the wondrous wheel of life.
Our meditation this morning is a meditation for Mother's Day by Elizabeth Tarbox. And it's a meditation that seems to me has been written by a mother. I stood out at the low tide mark early in the morning and looked back at the shore a quarter of a mile away. Trees whose every branch I know when I am standing beneath them, blended with their neighbors, and I could not recognize them. I found myself looking at small segments of the shore and wondering, if a sliver was all I could see, would I know it to be my beach in the morning light? Or would I know it only if I could see it all in one majestic arc of familiar landscape? Do I know it well enough so when I cannot see it, it is still there in my memory, fresh and sweet? Is it always available in the parts of my being that cannot be left behind? Do I know you well enough so that I would recognize you from a great distance, from the tilt of your head, the sway of your step, or the merest whisper of your voice? Have I looked carefully at you and noted the texture of your skin and the color of your eyes, so that when we are miles from here, I can see you easily in this space reserved for those most precious memories? Have I trusted you enough so that you know who you are and can be sure of yourself in a world that doesn't want to trust? Have I modeled the life I want you to live, one of caring, appreciation, and feelings and love? And have I learned all I can from you so I can draw on your wisdom, lean on your truth, even when we are far apart? And have I loved you enough so that you will know you are loved when the storms beat you down, the friendships disappoint, or the demands of the world that needs your love weigh too heavily on your shoulders? Have I said thank you to the creative spirit who brought our lives close enough to touch and who gave us this chance to notice one another and dwell together in this moment? Then let me give thanks now. Let us take a few breaths in silence. Blessed be. Our reading from this morning comes from a colleague, Dick Gilbert. It's called For Those Who Have Reared Us. We give thanks for those who have reared us, who have nourished us through sleepless nights and restless days, who have seen us through the good times and the bad, who have celebrated our triumphs and suffered through our defeats. We are grateful for their nurturing spirit, their gentle touch, their firm, kind hand, their familiar laugh, and their sympathetic tears. We acknowledge the unpleasant times as well, our struggle to separate ourselves as children who must make their own way in the world. We realize our times of ingratitude and selfishness and resolve to make amends. We pay silent tribute to the loved ones no longer among us and speak soft thanksgiving to those who are. May we who have been nurtured also be nurturers of those who follow. May we be a part of the current of humanity that courses through time and space. May we be the gardeners of the Spirit, even as we have been tended by loving hearts and hands. On this day, may we commingle gratitude for those who nourished us and commitment to those who receive the gift of love and life from us. May we be worthy. Blessed be. Our music is a recording of the UU Musicians Network singing a song called There Is a Love. And I invite you to look closely. You will see someone you know in the audience.
Retired as the president of Stargate Theological. 2, 3. There is a love holding me. There is a love holding all that I know.
This sermon started out as a Mother's Day sermon and quickly morphed into a sermon about being enough. One of the hardest things about parenting is believing that you are doing or being enough. You are putting in enough guidelines. You are giving enough freedom. You are making enough mistakes together. You are having enough successes. You are listening enough. You are teaching enough. You are holding enough. You are letting go enough. There are so many yardsticks to measure ourselves by that it's easy to believe we are not enough. This is true for mothers, fathers, and all the rest of us human beings. It's so easy to get trapped by our expectations and desires. I listened to Brene Brown's Family Parenting Manifesto. Oh my goodness. From those of you who don't know Brene Brown, she is a social scientist who researched things such as vulnerability and shame, perfection, and guilt. She really tries to help us become better people. One of her big bugaboos is perfection. She talks about how fear of being alone keeps us striving to look good. Fear, she says, is the basis for perfection. If I'm perfect, then I'm worthy and I will have enough love and I will be able to belong. She encourages each of us to know that we are worthy just the way we are. And then she writes this beautiful manifesto, which is full of impossible perfectionism. While I agree that we need to strive for better parenting, we also need to be kind and gentle with ourselves. First, she says to her children, I want you to know you are loved and lovable. When I read that, I thought, yes, that's our first principle. You have inherent worth and dignity. I want that for you, my fellow humans. I want you to know that you are loved and lovable. But sometimes we forget, and that's okay too. She goes on. She says, we will teach compassion by showing compassion. We will play and rest and place value on hard work, hope, and perseverance. We will learn accountability and respect. We will laugh and sing and dance and practice gratitude. She says we'll practice courage in our family by showing up and letting ourselves be seen and vulnerable. And about this time, I'm remembered of the Dr. Seuss line from Oh, the Places You Will Go, where he says, except when we don't. Except when we aren't singing and dancing and practicing gratitude, when we're lazy, grumpy, and disrespectful. Then she says to her children, I want you to know you are worthy of love, belonging, and joy. Yeah, got that, and it all seems impossible to be that perfect parent. And then she says that she will embrace her own imperfections as a way of helping her children to see self-compassion. Yes. We are all worthy of belonging and joy, and still, sometimes, more times than I care to admit, we fall short. We are human beings, and these manifestos are great places to start. They can be opportunities also, though, for us to beat ourselves up. It's our goal to live more wholeheartedly and deeply see our children and others as people. Seeing deeply is hard work, and sometimes we are too tired or overwhelmed. Seeing deeply means looking beyond the behavior to the person inside, seeing the people in our families as whole, lovable human beings, deeply seeing the people that we encounter at the grocery store and everywhere we go as whole, lovable human beings. We want those encounters to be good and true and authentic, and sometimes they are, and sometimes they're not. We've been watching a fair amount of Ram Dass lately. Ram Dass is an American spiritual teacher and psychologist who died in December of 2019. He writes about meditation, compassion, learning to be human. He's really good at telling stories and putting himself out there as an example. In one of his more recent films, he talks about going in and out of being an awakened person. In and out, back and forth. We are awakened by spiritual teaching, meditating, journaling, or examining our lives. But this awakening comes and goes. And he tells a story about arriving at a place where he was doing a talk. He's very particular about the type of microphone he gets when he wants a boom mic, one that comes in from the side, so that he doesn't have to hold it with his hand. And at this particular speaking engagement, all they had was a handheld mic. He watched himself get angry and snippy with the coordinators. He watched himself throw a temper tantrum because he could not get what he wanted. This awakened spiritual being is imperfect. He is enough in his imperfection. He is a teacher in his imperfection. We all vacillate between being nearly as good as we want to be and really messing up. We go in and out of being good people. I know recently I have been experiencing a fair amount of anger myself. That doesn't make me any less good, although it's not a comfortable feeling. The world is just a place that's infuriating me right now. I'm not proud of it. I do try to keep it from leaking out at my family, and I'm only moderately successful at that. We all need to learn to sit with our frustrations and angers, understanding that in addition to all the love and joy, there are other feelings and experiences as well. This virus time feels like starting over in some ways. Coping mechanisms we had to help us live a balanced life may not be available right now. As we sit with feelings and develop new coping mechanisms, it's good to remember you are good enough. I am particularly fond of Maya Angelou's quote, "Do the best you can until you know better. Then when you know better, do better." It's a matter of practice and patience, forgiveness and apologies, surrender and control. You are good enough. Please remember that. You are good enough. Our next hymn this morning is "When the Heart is in a Holy Place."
When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we trust the wisdom in each of us, every color, every creed and kind, and we see our faces in each other's eyes, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we tell our story from deep inside, and we listen with a loving mind, and we hear our voices in each other's words, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we share the silence of sacred space, and the God of our heart stirs within, and we feel the power of each other's faith, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place.
I want to say a special thank you to Alex Myers for all the work he has done going to church to record these pieces for us every week. Thank you so much, Alex. That one really lifted my heart. Thank you. After our closing words and postlude, we'll have a time for a quick self-care moment. And then we'll go into coffee hour to breakout groups for coffee hour. And I am going to ask, folks seem to like it when we have a question or a topic to talk about in the breakout room. If you would like to go to the breakout rooms, just stick around and we'll talk about a time in your life when you felt nurtured. So we'll have the closing words and the postlude and then the self-care moment.
Wild geese. You do not have to be good. You do not have to walk on your knees for 100 miles through the desert repenting. You only have to let the soft animal of your body love what it loves. Tell me about despair, yours, and I will tell you mine. Meanwhile, the world goes on. Meanwhile, the sun and the clear pebbles of the rain are moving across the landscapes, over the prairies and the deep trees, the mountains and the rivers. Meanwhile, the wild geese, high in the clean blue air, are heading home again. Whoever you are, no matter how lonely, the world offers itself to your imagination, calls to you like the wild geese, harsh and exciting, over and over announcing your place in the family of things.
Thank you so much, Nancy, for those beautiful pictures. That was great. Anybody who wants to share their art with us, this is a great opportunity for us to be able to see what other creative folks are doing in the church. I was also reminded that one of the things the membership committee was trying to do is to keep track of new folks. It's kind of hard. We used to greet people at the table, but we can't do that. So if you are new or visiting with us this morning and would like to connect with some of the folks in the membership committee and myself, put your email address in the chat box, and Ben will save the chat box and we will be able to get in touch with you and have some time to just chat. If you have a self-care moment that you would like to share, a way that you are helping yourself to cope with this time, I invite you to raise your hand.